Gene and I moved back up here in 1980 from Seattle. Since we're right adjacent to the ravine, we walked back and forth all the time. And if you looked in the ravine at that time, first of all, the trees were all covered with ivy, and even when the foliage was down off the trees, it was almost as if the foliage were there because there was so much ivy. But when you could see past, where you could see past the ivy, it was just full of tires and shopping carts and appliances and furniture and, you know, all kinds of plastic. So I just spoke up at one of the Port Garnder Neighborhood meetings and said that, you know, I was getting ready to go down there and just see what I could clean out. And then, you know, I asked if anybody wanted to go with me. And 7 or 8 people said, sure, let's go. And so I think we had 9 people down there for that first work party.
When was that?
That was in February or March of 2002.
All of those streams that feed down into Port Garnder Bay must have had value and importance to the tribes that were here first. I think we assume that each of those streams, all of which in the main industrial waterfront of Everett had vanished and been culverted, would have been the sites of, at the very least, summer habitation points for the Snohomish tribe. And also would have been the attraction for the first settlers. And we figured that Erskine Cromer, Ned Cromer, as everybody called him at the time, who arrived here in 1863, would have been drawn precisely to that stream. After his death, of course, he died in '85, and it wasn't really till the end of that decade that railroad development made that area really interesting to people. The first of which began to really impact Forgotten Creek in 1891, because by the end of that year, the Seattle Lake Shore and Eastern Railway had been built across the mouth of the creek. So it had been culverted probably sometime during the summer or early fall of 1891. And that spot was of great importance to the early developers of Everett, because of course the first real functioning industry in Everett happened right there. Adjoining the mouth of the stream a little bit to the north, the Puget Sound Wire, Nail and Steel Company built a factory to manufacture nails and spikes and brads and tacks and all kinds of different things. But they realigned that whole hillside and then eventually built first a wooden and then a beautiful train station to accommodate the Great Northern passenger traffic and cargo traffic on Bond Street. And at the same time, at the very mouth of the creek, the company that purchased the Rockefeller holdings and ran the Everett Railway and Electric Company built a huge power generating plant just immediately east of the railroad tracks, virtually right over the top of the stream, a little bit upstream between the power station and the Cromer Avenue trestle bridge. The Washington Brewing Company established a brewery that was there for several years right at the turn of the century. Part of the mystery of Forgotten Creek is that we don't know what people called it. Cromer Creek would have been a very logical choice, but you don't see it on maps. And once you culverted Cromer, the spot at Cromer Avenue, it was just forgotten. It was as if nobody paid any attention to it at all, and it just sort of grew up. It wasn't being used anymore. When it was being used, nobody seemed to have time or the interest to actually give it a name. And then when it was not used anymore, it just was sort of ignored, and that no one paid a great deal of attention to it.
First we had our kickoff meeting, introduced the purpose of the project and the process, and then once we hired Barker Associates and Paige Crutcher and Angelique, then they actually came on board and facilitated those meetings with us. And they helped to sort of draw out the different design ideas and the desires of the community for what the design might include.
You know, the plan that Paige came up with is really a concept design, and I think it fits very well with what the community really wanted. It meets all the requirements that we asked for as far as providing public access and a place for people to get together and enjoy what would then be a restored wetland.
A ravine has its constraints, and because there's a wetland in there and a stream, Forgotten Creek, which in some areas is sort of forgotten. In some areas it's apparent, in some areas it's not. We wanted to walk down sort of the path of least resistance. There's really sort of one way in and one way out. And so in order to create a trail through the ravine, it really did kind of design itself. I mean, we did play around with the idea of not having a trail run through the ravine, but then we thought it would really sort of lose its best opportunity, which is to bring people in and through the site.
I think with this process, as with most of our public process, is we really begin with the community and follow that all the way along. So really we go and get as much information about what they want as we can and bring it back to the office and then sit down with each other and go over what we got out of that meeting, you know, compare notes sort of things, and then just sit down and start sketching it out. Like what does this look like? What does it feel like? What does the community want? What are their main priorities? And then also taking a look at what the site has to offer and how we have to work with it.
It's just a lot of work. But when you look at it, if you don't do something, it would be really sad because it is a unique little spot. It's very intimate. It's a nice peaceful little setting. And all of the neighborhood green spaces, when you walk around and look at them now, are just full of non-native invasive plants. And they're just junky. And that's a terrible reflection.
What's important is that something get done here to beautify this beautiful canyon. I call it a canyon. There's other people that call it gulch. But I've been coming down here for 14 years, watching the birds, sitting down with the bums, and having a hot dog with them. And I dreamed about this years and years ago before Robert Everett decided to do something about it. Anyway, I think it's a worthwhile project, wonderful people that come down here to enjoy it. And I really feel it will enhance the neighborhood.